you don't need to be smart. You just need to actually have common sense. Because every answer is available either in a book, a podcast, a video, you name it. You can find out stuff. So that's what I did. Old saying that says knowledge is power. No, it's not. Action is. The knowledge is what makes that action happen.
You're listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast, featuring real business owners telling real stories about their real business experiences. Here are your hosts, John Chiappetta and Eric Jorn.
Welcome to another episode of Blood, Sweat, and Business. Today we have Oramas from Pro Auto Care out in Colorado. Welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Welcome, Al.
Thanks.
All right. So we want to start off. Just tell us about you, your shop, how you got started, how you got where you're at today.
Yeah, that's great. It's good. Well, thank you guys for having me on. Happy Friday to everybody.
Yeah,
And
happy Friday.
yeah, there's a good story behind all of it. I'm a lot of years into this. As I start counting things in decades, I start realizing, wow, you've been doing this a while. So 1980 in high school, 11th grade. I had a love affair for cars even younger than that, but that's actually when I got into the industry in automotive in 11th grade, and I started working at a service center and changed oil, mopped bathrooms, and worked that way through. Wound up in Colorado from New York, if you haven't picked up the accent already. Went to school in Colorado, did an associate's degree program for a couple of years, and went to go work for American Honda. Became a master Honda technician. Acura hit the ground in 1986. I became a master Acura technician as well. So one of the few guys that had both credentials at that time, and worked my way up in the corporate ladder of a dealership, all the way up to assistant service manager at the Acura store, foreman, all the different roles. But they were out of ethic, and I called them out on it after being there for 10 years, I think it was, and I got fired. That's what everybody needs to know that story. I got fired. I got fired because I was raised a little bit different. I had awesome parents, taught me right from wrong, and that helped me. So that was the start of Pro Auto Care. I was really enthusiastic, even being fired. Most people thought I was drinking or smoking something, especially in Colorado. And so because they're like, you got fired, isn't that a bad thing? I was like, no, it's a good thing because I'm actually going to start doing what I wanted to do, which is launch a business. So, and hopefully I'm heading the right track. This gives a little bit of insight of the story because these
100%.
are the stories in business that people will have to overcome a lot of things to get things started. And you're going to get a lot of no's, but you'll get the one yes, like Colonel Sanders, and that's all it takes. Right?
Exactly.
And you change the way America eats forever. And so, for me, it was, having this great idea, a lot of enthusiasm, and no money. I thought I was a roller because I had a good job, but now you need a lot of money to get a business going. And so I went to the banks, and almost every single one of them said no, 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 and no. I had a lot of discouraging moments, but I didn't give up, and I just connected myself with a business attorney who gave me some great ideas. I got an accountant who gave me some great ideas, um, i.e., and they just said, hey, here's some other avenue. Maybe you're going to too much Main Street. Go off the side road and try talking to a little bit smaller banks. They may have a program. They may want to be writing some business paper. Have you ever heard of an SBA? I said, no. What the heck is that? That's a great acronym. And so that was my introduction. And so I got together. I had a friend who was a grant writer for nonprofits, and she basically helped me write a business plan that allowed us to move into yet another level in business and put together a plan that actually could be followed. Uh, we wound up submitting this to the SBA. We got money, which was really cool. And the SBA actually used our business plan as a model
Wow.
For writing a business plan properly. It was a great accomplishment. I mean, a kid from New York that didn't quite have the education pedigree that many had, and so I did that, and so we got the money going. We started. That was 1992 is when we launched.
Wow.
So if you realize, 31 years in business, and it's pretty cool. So hopefully that answered a little bit. That's at least a
Oh,
starting story.
oh, 100%. Well, especially because the automotive repair business is such a capital intensive business. It's not cheap. You know, if I want to be a consultant, if I want to be a CPA, I can go out and hang a shingle for, a laptop pretty much and some software. An auto repair shop, I mean, what do you think it takes to start one from a capital investment standpoint? At least 300 grand, I'd think.
Hmm. Oh yeah, well, let me tell you, that is one of the tougher things, and a lot of people that do this in this sector, they have a great affinity with vehicles. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they have a great understanding. I had that. I was, top tier guy in my shop. 14 Master Tech. I was always the top three. Uh, but what happens is now you need to learn personnel management of people, and you need to learn business.
Mm-hmm.
You need to learn finance and accounting and taxation. It's like, holy cow! You thought cars were tough, uh, and 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 you know what? What's so cool is, let me just say this, and I don't say this, you don't need to be smart. You just need to actually have common sense, because every answer is available either in a book, a podcast, a video, you name it. You can find out stuff. So that's what I did. I
Mm-hmm.
learned a ton of stuff from some great people like Zig Ziglar, Anthony Robbins, Brian Tracy, and the list goes on of stuff I listened to learn and figure out how to do it.
What what would you attribute to you making that leap from being the technician into that business owner seat?
Wow, that's good. You know what it was? Me having to stare at myself in the mirror and say, "You got a great talk, but talk is not good enough. Action is." You know, it's
100%.
that old saying that says, "Knowledge is power." No, it's not. Action is. The knowledge is what makes that action happen, and that's what it took. And it really took me to hit a real tough spot, because my next step was to return to another cushy job and to go work at another, Honda or Acura dealership. I could have had a job that afternoon, with my credentials, because they don't have that many of those guys around. And I just said, I'm going back to the same. I'm going back to a corporate structure. I'm probably going back to somebody that their ethics is probably not my ethics. I'm all about taking care of people and being honest. And that really was that leap. It was those moments. Sometimes pain can create a little bit of things in us that cause us to get into that uncomfortable place, and that's what I think is I attribute to my success and to me to make that leap.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. Sometimes that leap is the scariest thing to get over. You
Yeah,
got to roll the dice on yourself.
Mark, what you just said is so spot on. You think about that leap. I think of this one thing that really just stuck, and I still say it. Brian Tracy coined this one. He said, "If you're in business and you go do this stuff, the worst thing you can do have happen is that it fails, and failing is an event." And then he said the next thing, which is probably the bigger piece. He said, "There's not a firing squad, so unless that was the penalty, then you'd probably reconsider because you might get shot. But there is not that, and I think if more people embrace that, they would be more willing to take that chance and that risk, and not have the regret of not trying."
Yeah, there is some statistic out there, and I can't remember exact numbers, but it takes X amount of times of failure for an entrepreneur to actually make it. And I thought the number was in excess of 15.
Wow.
I've heard that too.
Yeah,
I know it's a double digit.
yeah. So it's tough to get over failure, but sometimes you have that resiliency, and it sounds like you do. So
Yeah. And you brought up
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate.
a good mindset. When I approach a situation and I need to adjust my risk tolerance on it, I ask myself, what's the worst case scenario, and can I live with the consequence of that? And that oftentimes is what guides me to making my decision, right? I mean, if the worst consequence is I face the firing squad, well, maybe I might not take that risk. But if it's, I get $100 penalty, well, okay, I can live with $100 penalty. Like, that's not going to put me out of business. Like,
Hmm.
I probably won't even lose sleep over it. I'll just write the check and move on.
Yeah.
So is that a risk I can take?
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think when people start talking business and start looking, one of the biggest things, money is what? Leverage. Loans are leverage. All these things. Yeah, it's a great word to use in there.
Yep.
One of the things you got to assess above all things that you're doing, because you can be really exciting. You could have the widget that you create as the next amazing thing, but if you've leveraged everything, you might be putting yourself in a really bad spot. And so you have to make adjustments. So true that I think this maybe adds a little pretty cool story. So I was pretty excited because the bank was even willing to talk to me about lending me money, and the SBA is like, "Yeah, you're cool." But then when they came back and said, "Hey, by the way, we're gonna need a little more skin in the game,"
Mm-hmm.
didn't
Yeah.
quite use those words, but that's what it was, right?
Yep.
And so they came back and said, "Hey, so what do you got?" I told them, "I got a house, a nice house, and it's worth good, and I've been paying off on it." They're like, "Okay, we need that, and we need your." I had like huge investments and tools, close to 150,000. They wanted that, a UCC on that. I mean, they put all kinds of things on there. And then they said, "Oh, by the way, too, we're gonna need 20% down, or something to that
Mm-hmm.
effect." I mean, it's been so long ago. It was a huge amount of cash, or 15 even. Um, it was a big amount of cash, and I was like, "Wow, I don't have a job." I was actually working out of my garage. Uh, what's amazing is I had the vision at an early time of wanting to do what I wanted to do. That I bought a house that didn't have a garage, so I can buy a house in the right price point, and it had land on it. And I built this really cool, oversized garage, lighted, heated, and everything. I supported myself for half a year out of that garage. I walked around with business cards, went to gas stations, seeing people pump up gas in their Acura or in their Honda, and I
Mm-hmm.
passed my card and I ran my business out of my garage. And so that whole piece later turned out to have this great worth, which I could put in. So what I was trying to say to the story was, here I am having to come up with quite a bit of cash, and I'm like, I don't think I can do it. So I re-looked at my plan, and just because the people I was around, I said, "Can you do it for less?" And this is maybe that lesson that some business owners need to think about, because here's the problem with guys like us is we like nice, shiny, new, cool stuff. Okay, new lifts for us is sexy. Okay,
Yeah.
tire
Yeah.
balancers, alignment machine, they're sexy. I mean, for us, that's how we are. We're weird, and yeah, we do like girls, but I mean, it's just it's what our mindset has, and that's just like we're so used to this thinking. And I said to myself, well, this is going to put you in a very bad financial position. You're going to wipe your cash out completely. And we rewrote the plan, and we borrowed half of what they were willing to lend us.
Wow. That's a huge adjustment.
That and that was because we went and bought used equipment. We
Smart.
went and found used stuff and started it up. Literally, I opened the doors. We didn't even have a lift. We had ordered it, wasn't in. I was using jack stands and a floor jack to run my first day. I did $1,000 first day in business. I was like, woo!
Mhm.
And so, and I did
Ouch.
like 150 the next day.
Wow.
So that's a story. That's some background.
Yeah, that's impressive. And that just goes to show you, like, there's so many little things, right? Like, I wouldn't even have thought, but like, if you're an accomplished technician, right, you got actually a nice piece of collateral to put up against a loan. You actually start with a fair amount of skin in the game because of that, because there's a significant value there. And then,
Hmm.
you bring up good points, right? You don't have to go out and there's the old adage is buy once, cry once, especially when it comes to tools for technicians. So this is largely like encompassed in their culture. But you can go out and buy used equipment. You can go find put a shop in your yard, right? Repair cars on jack stands. I mean, this is all very
Hmm.
creative.
Yeah, and this is that piece that I cannot tell you how many people, and I'll offer advice to folks, because I run into a lot of business people, not only in the automotive, but other places, and I'll offer some advice. And, one of the things you have to be so smart along the way is when you start these businesses, there again, the word leverage. You didn't just put so much into presenting something that may not make you the money. And I've watched people just, lease facilities, you know, change them, put in new electrical services, put in HVAC system on a lease. You don't own it. I mean, it
Yeah.
gets you put it into the equipment, put it into the personnel, put it into make a nice clean place. Paint can do a lot. And those are some real big advice. But there's that stuff you got to put your ego a little bit aside and go. I can make it. And that's what we did. I wish it was different. I had a used desk and a folding chair that I did my
Hmm.
payroll, accounting, bookkeeping, sales, and everything. That was in the back room. And I used to have that little. Remember that spray flex you could paint and did a texture, but
Yep.
it was all like the edges were broken and stuff. It looked cool, man. It looked like a gunmetal gray. It was cool.
You said something really good there too. Not, you know, don't invest all your money in not just in the stuff inside the shop, but the tools. But the most important thing is the people, right? I think that's so sage, because I think what will happen is, I'm a new shop owner and I have to make decisions, and I might say like, oh, I can't afford that tech, or I can't afford that service. Or probably the first thing that every new shop owner, especially that comes from the tech world, is going to say is, I can't afford that service writer. And that might be the most penny wise and pound foolish statement they can make, right? Because I think that hire might change the whole trajectory of your shop. Is that something that you
You,
experienced?
wow, yeah, you hit on something I realized real quick. I couldn't be everything in my biz. You know, I was the guy. Come tell, he can diagnose anything. He can, and I was selling service. I was ordering parts. I was the bookkeeper doing all the pieces. And every business owner starts that way. But you're going to need to figure out what you can and cannot do. It's simple. You have a hat. You can only
Mm-hmm.
wear one hat at a time. And whatever that hat is has to be the most profitable thing you're doing. That's why for me, literally a year and a half into opening my business, I hired my first service advisor. And because I had assistants, but I couldn't go on long term. And mind you, you didn't make very much in the first couple of years, but it grew, and I hired a full blown advisor. I had assistants. I would answer phones, schedule appointments, and we do. And I was no longer in the shop through that first period of time. And then I realized, I said, can't do this. I cannot tell you, there are people that I know that they're still in the shop. They've run their businesses 10, 15, even 20 years. But you know why? Because they're the best technician, they're the best they're the best service advisor. You sometimes have to move over and let somebody else polish the case. And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not perfect, it's okay. It looked better than it was when it was dirty. To those points, that's something I learned in a lesson. And honestly, that came from audio books. That came from listening and learning to some real amazing speakers that I picked that stuff up, and it was like this information spoke to me about what I had to do to succeed. And I had already had built, by the time we hired a writer, I had two technicians in the back of the shop, and then an assistant that worked on vehicles, and an assistant in the front, and then my wife was helping me at the beginning, and then we brought in, and literally within that same year of hiring the one advisor, I hired another advisor and made that guy manager. So there was
Wow.
like mornings I didn't actually have to be there to open.
Yeah.
That was a nice thing.
Yeah. So if you were to look at all the people that you've listened to, and um, the audiobooks or the books that you read, and you got a new guy that says, "Hey, I want to open up my shop." If you were to give them, say, "Hey, this is a must read," what would you give them?
That's a tough ask
Yeah.
because it literally is like, yeah, if you want to go from pudding to steak, I mean, because depending on the person, right? They may only start off with pudding because you're gonna blow their mind. Uh, Unlimited Power from Anthony Robbins was one of the most influential books that I've ever been around. And this is like, love him or like him, did whatever. The guy made a lot of money. This is some of his key stuff. That was big. Um, Psychology of Business from Brian Tracy was just amazing. Um, he was a great one. And so now going forward to that question, Mark, um, there are some amazing books. Dare to Lead is tremendous from Brene Brown, and Leading Performance is a huge one. And Leaders Eat Last, Simon Sinek, is just right up there for me. So that's old and new, right?
Yeah.
I just brought in a lot of generations there.
Those are
Oh, good
great,
pick.
all great books. I know. If I were to meet somebody who said I want to open up a shop, I'd probably hand them a copy of the E Myth too.
Oh yeah, I forgot that one. Yeah.
Only because I feel like that's one of those books that, like, their number one goal is to teach you to think like a business owner versus the craftsman or whatever
Right.
your craft is, your trade is.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's kind of
that's
the
a big
key.
one.
I think that's key in business is that owner being able to step out and let other people do the work. I don't think there's a lot of business owners out there that are willing to do that, because your thinking is forced to say I have to be in control of this. And I think like we were kind of talking before, you get in your own way when you do that. So if you can work on your business instead of in it, and it sounds like you've been able to do that.
I've done it all the way through. I literally, once those decisions were made that I couldn't be everything because I overwhelmed myself, what it really came down to, truth be known, being there on a Sunday morning, trying to do all the accounts payable entries and figuring out payroll for a Monday, and just going, you just been working how many days? Mark, you really hit on it because of the fact that owners usually come to open something because they not only either have a great idea or they were in a trade and thought they could offer something beneficial. Okay. And I can speak to the automotive because that's what I have an affinity with. I've done it for my entire life. And so I'll focus on that. They walk in and they are the top when they go in or close to it of the knowing what they can do in their trade. But as you said, working on or in the business is two completely different things. And the exponential growth that you will experience once you make the decision is unbelievable. To that point, I'll give you just true stories. In those 2 years, remember I said a year and a half I hired an advisor, right? In the second year, by that time, we had 4 service lifts. We then, as year two came in, we added another 4 lifts. We had 8 lifts. Okay. 2 years after that, we added another 8 lifts. We had 16 lifts from day one that we had opened, and it all literally happened within just over 4 years' time.
Wow.
That's a tribute of when you get out and you let people succeed and you guide them to their success, and you realize that you have a new job, and that's called running a company. Then everything changes and you're out of the shop and you have to kind of eat crow a little bit because you're not the smartest guy in the room anymore because there are guys and gals that are going to be much smarter than you and you let them shine.
Yeah, we had a smart guest on here about a month or so ago, and he said, I like to be the dumbest guy in the room now. Nothing makes me more happy than that.
Because I don't have all the answers.
There's some days that I'm like, that sounds really good, right? I wish I could just look around the room and say, I don't know the answer. You guys got this.
Yep.
I think that's when you know you've really hit that leadership spot. You really nailed it. Hey, Al, real quick, we confused you. So this is John.
No worries.
You called him Mark a couple
It says
times.
Mark.
It says Mark. Oh yeah, our screen probably says Mark on it. But yeah, this is John. I get it. We screw.
See, I'm losing my mind. So, John, my apologies.
No
That's
worries,
not really
man.
good.
So
You
what's
can call me anything you like now.
what's cool about this software is I'm pretty sure we can just delete out where it says Mark and type in John, and the AI will create that audio, or we'll just leave it and it'll just be kind of funny. And Mark will add a little blooper at the end of us making fun of you.
Yeah, so so you got to think about this. So when I used to do, and I mentioned before we started, I did a radio show, and we'd bring in guests, okay, and they would be we could have 6 hot mics, okay,
Wow.
all in an octagon, and we'd have the engineer room and 2 people on there, and then we had another meeting room, and people were talking, and we'd have a guest on the phone. So you talk about herding cats. Holy
Yeah.
cow. I mean, there's conversations going one way and the other, and we were calling people the wrong things many times.
My mind could not process that many conversations and that many voices at one time. I would just be like, okay, I'm tuned out. Takes a unique skill set to do something like that.
So what were you doing on the radio show? You guys was all talking about cars?
Yeah, so it was the Consumer Advocate Show. It was called the Troubleshooter Show on KHOW, local AM station, talk radio, 4 hour show. It was cars. I was the car expert when the car calls came in. Fridays were usually Car Fridays, so people would call in with either bad deals at a dealer, car that failed emissions, car at a repair shop, a tow company that took away, and we try to come up and solve people's issues.
Oh,
So they would
wow.
call, give us the problem, this and the other. It was You'd be amazed. I mean, some of the stuff was just over the top. Hey, the tow truck came to my driveway and took my car away because I haven't paid for it in 3 months. Like, what do I do?
It's like listening to the Dave. You ever listen to the Dave Ramsey show?
Oh, you better believe it. Dave, I've met Dave. Yeah, he's a good guy. He broadcasted on that same station there for a period of time.
Oh, really? Yeah. I think it's hilarious listening to some of it's so weird how different the scenarios are too. Somebody's like, yeah, I make $30,000 a year. I'm thinking about buying an $80,000 Mercedes. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
All right. We got to get back on track here. We're having fun though. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So Al, you've been a long time, very popular member in ATI. At what point in time did you say, I think it makes sense for me to hire a coaching company to help with my shop?
That would have been around 2000, and it wasn't with ATI. It was with another company out of California called Management Success, and Management Success later became Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Personally knew Mike Lee, who started it, was a tremendous coach in person. Unfortunately, we lost him. He passed away, and company got taken over, went a different direction. I kind of paused out. Um, I had heard several people that had worked with the ATI, and knew that they had a different approach to things. So I said, let me go see. They'd call me. Obviously, those guys are good at calling. They constantly, they know your number. They get a hold. But I just said, let me go see, and I went to it. What got me to sign on, not only with the Mark Winslow that presented, but there was a gentleman by the name of Buck, and he was a dealership owner, and he had worked for them, and he was traveling with them, and he shared some really good insights and things that made me start thinking about, hmm, maybe I should consider talking to these guys. Once we got launched in on that, we started back in 2015. Started working with a consultant, started working with a coach. I've had multiple great coaches. We've advanced. We're part of the alumni now. Done a lot of training. My people have benefited from the training. My people are probably better at it than me, for crying out loud. I mean, they go do the training and they learn. It's been an eye opener, and it's really helped us to focus on very important things in running a company.
Definitely. We work with quite a few members, and one of the biggest benefits, and I can see this too, even our firm is in a similar organization, are those 20 groups. I feel like that has changed the shop, and it's just working with other shop owners that you're sharing ideas, you're comparing financials, it's such a beneficial program. How soon did you join a 20 group?
I am now on my third year, I think, with my 20 group.
Okay.
Of the current 20 group. I was in a previous 20 group that was out of Phoenix called Phoenix Horizon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently in Driven Performance, which is, they call it an elite group. I guess that makes me elite. I mean, like, I hope I'm not an elitist, for crying out loud. But no, and so what's really cool, but I got one pretty cool. I mean, I might as well tote my horn here for a minute. Last year at the ATI Super Conference, yours truly was voted top 20 member of all the 20 groups. They called me up to the stage. It was a moment in time. I got to walk across the stage. I did my famous Richard Nixon double peace signs and went across the stage. They got it on pictures, man. Wait until you see it. And I was awarded that. That was an absolute honor because that's my peers electing me. And the entire group voted and said that I must inspire them or aggravate them, one of the two. I'm not sure, but it's pretty cool.
That was out in Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah, Puerto Rico. Yeah, I was over there just swinging my Spanish. I was on it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I was actually there. I saw that. That was really cool.
That's right. And I think we ran into you in the vendor thing, I had seen. I was like, "Who the heck are these guys?" Little did I know. Little did I know. I mean, who knows? I mean, fate and paths and crossing and meeting people. I think a lot of stuff is ordered by God, and I believe that things happen all for reasons. And so it was pretty cool how we came together and working together now.
Definitely, definitely. Um, so you got two shops. One of the most interesting stories always is what prompted me to go from location 1 to location 2. And it's funny how different that answer can be.
Oh yeah, everybody has a different one. So I was actually interviewed by Ratchet and Wrench concerning that, and I made the front cover. I was like, "Holy cow!" My mom could see me now. I mean, it was pretty cool, and it was basically knowing your market. That's really the problem. I had always looked at another shop, and there were multiple deals I came across. People offered me some of their businesses through the years. It just never came about. And so, sometime around, I think it was like 2009, we really started looking at it hard. Our shop had grown. We'd actually moved the shop and bought our own facility and made it the way we wanted and owned the dirt. And so now I'm going, this dirt thing's not a bad deal. And so I made that decision to just go ahead and look at the potential, having to find the right scenario. For us, I started watching Denver and the growth in this town, and so it kind of realizing, this town's getting busy, highways are busy, customers. So we would always kind of keep tracks of people who would come back and people didn't. We would do the search criteria: who's not been in 12 months, who's not been in 24 months, and we derived these lists. And it was like an eye opener to see people's names that I knew that were
Mm-hmm.
on these lists. So I got bold and I picked up the phone and made a bunch of phone calls. Okay. And literally, out of quite a bit of sampling, there was only maybe a couple of them that like we upset them. And most of those, I got back in because I said, look, man, we might have messed up. Come back in. But that was a minute. Many of the people, they were basically had moved in different places. Kids are now going to school. You're not convenient. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I started finding out where these people were, taking their names, taking their addresses, and noticed that so many of them were south and west of us. These were very residential areas, great school districts. Okay. So changes of addresses, changes of move. It was literally an eye opener. And this was prior to me doing the property. I looked at that and I was just like, wow, we're missing out on market. And so here I'm thinking, okay, probably my customer is going to be the bulk of, if I open up a new store. It actually was a lot less than I thought it would be. It actually accounted for about 11.2% of the business we did at our new location, which was in Littleton. Littleton actually needed a service facility, and we found a property directly across the street from a community college.
Oh,
So
perfect.
every day, thousands of people will fill these parking lots. So that was kind of that's hopefully makes sense of how everything kind of progressed to that. And so in 2009, we identified the property. We purchased the property yet again, SBA, because I got a good history. I did a 7A, and
Mm-hmm.
a 7A gave us the money for the purchase of the property, some business equipment money, and some business startup capital. And we borrowed all that. And that got us off the road. We got a really good rate back then, and that store launched, and we own that property. I'm proud to say that that property is paid off. We own that dirt, so that's a good moment.
Congrats. That's
Yeah, it's
huge.
actually a very scientific approach to your second
Yeah.
location. Most people I know are just like, yeah, that looks good. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of cars there, but I mean, there's some market analysis. But that was pretty scientific, and you went down deep and started calling your clients. That's actually pretty
yeah,
intuitive.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things that you talked about that I was like, these are really interesting
Yeah,
discussion points. Like, hey, being bold, right? And just sometimes it's just pick up the dang phone and call people and talk to them. It's one of the hardest things for people to be willing to do now because it's so easy to just type an email or send a text. But you pick up the phone, you generally get the answer you need. Another thing, this is so brilliant. I never really thought about it, but if you open an automotive repair shop in a market with a great school district, there's always going to be people moving in and moving out. And that's creating a constant flow of customers, right? Because families are going to be seeking that district for their kids. Families are generally great automotive repair customers because they care about the safety of their vehicle. It's really a great concept. And, geez, how many people just open a shop in a location because it's the cheapest or the easiest or the most convenient? And sometimes you got to be a little strategic in what you do.
Yeah, and to that, okay, there's a little bit of research that you also have to look at. I mean, think about how many shop owners could actually, maybe they could if they open up a new place. What's the school district here? How is that school district? Are they growing? What's the classroom sizes and graduating class and all that? We looked into it. We actually looked into that, and we were lucky because we wound up in Littleton. It's a Littleton school district and stuff, so we pull from that, but we're also pulling from south of there, which is the Highland School District, which is also great schools, and that's where the people live. And those people drive a lot.
Yeah.
If you got kids, you drive a lot. I mean, my God. It was a good moment when my kids actually got cars because they're all old enough now. I got 4 of them, and they all drive. But man, my wife was a cab driver. Holy cow!
Well, also think about it, right? So if I'm a family, I have kids, and they get their driver's license. Now my vehicle fleet multiplies. So I got one relationship with, say, 4 or 5 vehicles. That's a great customer for an auto repair shop. Yeah, that's such a good strategy. I'm going to tell this story for the rest of my life.
There you go, man. Yeah, that's that little thing. I think if you look at, because I've looked at them, the analysis, the demographic, the household incomes,
Yeah.
all of people. Those are important numbers, mind you. I'll never negate that that's not important. Data is important, but there's also some other things at work that you have to really look at, and just the vibrancy. Because here's something, as much as I can tout and say, "Wow, great decision," one thing I didn't see coming was the Denver store that has now been around for decades. Its clientele got old.
Mm-hmm.
When people get old, they don't drive as much. Okay. And it was literally after all those things, I'm constantly looking in the marketing piece. We want to send, hey, we miss you. We actually do a letter. And the letter's got a baby crying and it says, we miss you. It's pretty funny. It's a hit. It was a hit. And it said, hey, we haven't seen you. We'd love to have you come back. Here's an offer. Here's $50 towards anything. And we got phone calls. And we got phone calls from people, hey, Norm, I'm sorry to tell you, he passed away. I know he was one of your customers. And that was an eye opener. But then just seeing people, and we would see names like in these lists. And I was like, oh my God, Ruth. I mean, Ruth Pettick, oh my goodness. And I'd call her, and she's like, I'm retired now. I don't drive. I'm lucky if I drive 30,000. So our neighborhood market and demographic changed in Denver. We had to go through that period of time. This has been now probably 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
All those neighborhoods are changing. Families moving in. Elementary schools are now enrolling like crazy. And it's going through its cycle. So you got to be prepared for that too.
That's interesting. I would have never thought about.
Oh, when you have that like a long term, most of the time you have school districts, you think, like you were saying, families are in and out. You don't really think you're going to have that scenario where you're going to have that many people in retirement or new families aren't moving in. But, I mean, that could definitely be a part of the business life cycle.
Yeah. Well, we think a lot about that. So if we're going to go look at acquiring another accounting firm practice, one of the things we're going to look at is the demographic of their clientele, right?
How old are they?
People who are younger and active in their environment, their financial environment, need a lot more help, and that's what we want. People who are in retirement are ready to, they got a plan. It's steady as it goes. I mean, maybe on the financial services end, that's a whole different ball game, right? That's when their portfolio is maximized, but.
That's not a bad spot to be in.
I guess that creates a juxtaposition for us, doesn't it?
I can't. You asked me to spell that. I don't think I can.
Today over lunch, I was talking with one of our tax and accounting managers, and he's, he found one of these great water shops. So one of these shops that are part of this private equity backed group. You know, he's like, what's the deal with this? Why are they buying these auto repair shops? And Al, you bought the dirt and how important real estate fits in the equation of an automotive repair shop. It's one of these businesses that if you can start one and you don't have to be the operator of that business, it will pay for that dirt. And as you've shown, in a very fast period of time. And if you can find a good market with good schools and a good demographic, what happens to real estate in those areas?
You're seeing what you just talked about, like in Colorado, it's on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
There's investment groups. There's just a bunch of guys. There are some that have grown organically through themselves, some that have gotten into some investing groups and what have you. And there's all these chains that have moved in here. And it's interesting because everybody's like, "Oh, you worried about all that?" And I'm like, no, because they're not going to give what we give. Okay, number one, the service and the level of technicians. We we made that our goal. We literally we set themes for each of the year we operate. 2 years ago, it was called winning culture. It was our business. That was our mission. We have actually posters in our shops that say that. And then what it was the only way we can be winners is that we apply ourselves to become winners. So we teach ourselves to become better and better technically. So we achieve that. Now this weekend, this is where we get our next theme for the following year. We'll be doing it. But part of us, we know that growth is coming. Okay. And so this meeting is really centered on this. And hence why I've got a new accountant firm working with me because I need some good advice. And mind you, there's some opportunity to come my way. Let me tell you. Uh, but but the dirt piece is the amazing piece. You look at the models out there. Okay, you watch the ones that were good and the ones that were bad. Okay, Christian Brothers is the perfect example of a wonderful real estate company. Okay. Yeah, they fix
Mc,
cars. Yeah, they
is that
do. They
McDonald's?
sure do. McDonald's. It's a real estate company. Oh my gosh. They own on the best blocks in the best areas in the best cities. Not all perfect, but most. And Christian Brothers doing the same exact thing, buying the best dirt, doing the best things, getting operators in there, putting them on a hook to get it, and they'll take it back if it doesn't work out. They have a great model. Now look at models that didn't do well or not doing well. The good years, okay, and don't know what they look like over in your end. Even some of the Firestones, Midases, okay. Some of them are dilapidated old businesses, and I've noticed many of them that have closed, and some of these chains have actually bought them and took over. So that's that piece that you got to look at. The business is very attractive to buy a business, but if you can't buy the dirt, you got to take pause. Now, maybe you're not in the part of your business where you can do it. You're just getting going, and as an opportunity, you're working for an employer, he wants to offer to you. That's a great place to go because, yeah, it's probably to get dirt and to get a business loan, that's going to be a little tough, but always put it in the back of your mind. To put it to and always remember, which I said earlier, it's a lease. Okay, make it nice, but don't make it the Taj Mahal. Okay,
Yeah.
I literally I know of an individual that went into a building and put $250,000 in improvements before the first customer walked through the door in a lease place. He lasted 3.5 years
Wow.
and folded, and the bank took it all back, and
Yeah.
it's now a body shop.
Well, I will tell you, if you are in a position in which you need to make significant repairs to the building, that you got to ask that landlord for a tip, tenant improvement credit
Oh, yeah.
against your lease. I mean, you know that if it's not in habitable space, you can do that. You can actually go and ask and say, "Hey, you guys provide credit. You know, I'll coordinate the improvements." And most landlords, if they know what they got, they'll say, "Okay, we'll do that," because they don't want to spend the money and the headache and the time to do it, and it's going to make you a happy customer. So, but most business owners, they don't know about things like that. There's little nooks and crannies out there that you got to know about, and it's sometimes it's just
Like,
saying, does this make sense that I got to walk into a building that I got to pay monthly rent to, and I got to put 250 grand in the place just to use it? That's crazy.
Right.
yeah, and to what you just hit on here just a little bit ago when you asked about ATI, and I'll even just refer back to the accounting firm. There are people that have experience and knowledge from past things, And anybody that's maybe listening to this, that's in business, starting up business, thinking of it, what have you, one of the biggest things you can do is just to learn from people that know. Always be a sponge, available to hear. Don't ever be so haughty that you don't receive. But to the things you just said, landlords will make it all bougie for you, and they'll just add it to the piece, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, we need a hot tub and we need a pool room, and they'll do it. Some will, okay, but understanding that if you're moving into a triple net lease, what is that you're assuming? You're assuming stuff. Okay, then I need some certifications on roofs, on HVAC, on plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are things that cost you a lot. And on a triple net, you better make sure you read it. Don't think that all that lawyer jargon is garbage. Read some of it. And if you're not really good at understanding it, pay the man his dues. Give it to an attorney. Say, can you read this and find the holes for me? And run some concerns in red marker across the areas you want me to talk about. Cannot tell you how many people, just for excitement to open up something, will skip those things. And I
Yep.
know many, and then so that happens. And the last thing is just when you're around like associations like ATI, you get to meet owners that have been several years ahead of you and have done this. You can bounce those ideas off them.
Yeah. No, nothing gives you more wisdom than experience, right? Once you experience everything, you learn a heck of a lot about that.
Yeah. All you need to do is get burned once.
You get burned once, you don't get burned twice, generally,
right.
not for the same thing.
Right.
And that's where, like you said, right, you surround yourself, be the sponge. Don't, if you go to a conference or you go to one of these sessions, don't go back to your hotel room and, jump on your computer and do the emails and all that stuff. No, you need to spend the time. Go talk with people. You will learn more in those social settings than you will probably even attending the sessions that are provided there, because you're talking to people who have been in the shoes of something that you may experience one day, and they're going to give you the firsthand experience on how to handle it. It's so beneficial.
100%. I agree with that, and that's a big one. I got a question for you though, because you guys in the interview, you've been asking a question. I'll ask you a question.
Yeah, this
You
is
guys,
role
you guys
reversal.
are
I
on
like it.
businesses, and so you get people that listen, and you probably get a lot of people that don't listen.
Yeah.
And through the years, you try to give advice, and then you watch it, and you can't do the "I told you so" moment because that wouldn't be that big. But you've watched some big successes, and you've seen failures. What Give me an idea or something maybe you saw where somebody should have taken the time and they got themselves upside down. Do you have something where now they either
John,
purchased or went in?
John, I mean, if you would, I mean, I look at back and I didn't work in this industry in the 08, 09 era, but I'm guaranteeing there's a whole lot of strategies people who overuse that word leverage.
Yeah. I think
then.
honestly, I think I have to go even back that far. I think you can look at COVID.
Yeah.
And a lot of restaurant owners that I know that had some leveraged equipment that they bought, that kind of thing. And when all of a sudden you had to completely change your model and you didn't have that money to pay that debt, it got yourself into some pretty precarious positions. And, you saw some businesses that were there for 80 years, 90 years, that kind of stuff. I saw COVID really take some of those nice restaurants, old stuff, and they were gone, So I kind of think like when you saw that, the restaurants that did make it, the family-owned ones, I'm kind of thinking more of, the ones that didn't have any debt on the books, those are the ones that survived. And obviously there's a lot more than just no debt on the books for a good, for a good restaurant to survive. I might be, watering it down a bit, but for me, that's what I kind of saw. I saw a lot of people I know that, to get their restaurant going, they just leveraged everything. And like you had said, sometimes buying some of that used equipment, actually, you could do that in a lot of industries, not just, car or auto repair. You can do that in restaurant. You could do that in, other scenarios. In fact, I'll be honest with you, when I first started, I had used computers. What do you think? I wasn't buying new computers to do tax returns on. They were old.
Don't buy more than what you need, right?
Yeah. So that was what they did.
I had a 386. I had a 386 with a floppy drive. Okay, just let you know that.
Yep. So it is what it is. You got to start. I think there's something to being humble.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've had the conversation enough times to know if I'm telling you cut your losses and move on, if you listen to me, it's probably going to work out better than if you don't listen to me, because I have an experience with someone who hasn't listened to me. And I think I've had that conversation 4 or 5 times, and the hole just gets deeper every time. Every conversation, it's sadder and sadder. But I had somebody, they invested $2 million into a gym franchise. We got just the starting gun went off, and we're like, this isn't anywhere near what we were expecting. And I said, you should see if you can get out now. Get out now. Don't try to ride it out and hope it gets better. Get out now. He did. And he lost a lot of money. He lost 1.2 million on it, but he's fine. He's actually doing better now than he was. He's like, here's all my cash. I stopped pouring it into this new venture, and I don't have this headache. I just cut my losses. But some people are too petrified to say, hey, you know what? I just got to cut it and move on.
Right. So
Yeah,
it goes back to us
the
talking
reason
about
I
failure.
asked those. The reason I asked that because of the fact that obviously the audience, whoever listens, um, you sometimes can get to a place where you're your own advisor, even though you're asking for advice,
Yeah.
right? And you don't listen, and it's just to the point that John made about even COVID with the test, because essentially if 1 month 50% of your revenue didn't come in, you're going to make everything.
Yeah.
That's a real stark question that you have to ask yourself, and it's like, well, no, of course not. No, I mean we're placing orders, we got everything. It's like, think about that. Think about your cash position where you're at, and if you can actually take on that new debt. Because I'm going to be faced with some of this. We're moving in. That's like I'm thinking properties are still for sale like they were. I'm looking at stuff a couple 100,000 now. It's a couple million now to buy stuff, and I'm looking actually at one that just showed up yesterday for me of all things. We'll have a conversation. Um, and it's zone automotive and it's zone industrial mixed use, which is like you can build
Wow.
anything you want. I could build a plant. No, no, it's pretty
You're in
cool. There's some,
Colorado. That
and
word has multiple
Yeah.
meanings.
yeah, man, I'm telling you what, I can grow. I can do a grow farm for crying out loud. We get everybody all jacked up, and no to that. But I asked that question because of that insight. That if somebody hears, they're like, so maybe I should hear what these people are telling me and what they're saying, and really take that advice and take it to heart. But I don't like losing money. It's better than losing a lot more money. You
Yeah.
just gotta know when you gotta cut. You gotta cut. It's that bad relationship. You have that girlfriend. She's just never gonna get better. It's time to cut the losses. Your heart will be broken, but you'll heal.
That's
Oh,
that could be a whole new
that's
podcast right there.
oh, that's too
That's awesome.
funny. Al, I
Yeah.
know you got a very important obligation. If you could just take 1 minute, tell us about that, and we'll get things wrapped up. Because you told us about what you got going on today and tomorrow, right before the
Mm,
call. Give us just
yeah.
100-foot view on
I'll give
that.
you the quick one.
Yeah.
I'll talk fast like I'm from New York or something. So we're actually heading over. I'll leave here. I'm going to head over there. We did a hotel. We got with the sales team and we booked a bank of rooms. We've got 10 of us going to be there, the leadership, from our lead technicians to our foremen to our assistant managers and stuff. And we're all getting together. We're all going to have dinner tonight, appetizers, sit around, and we're going to talk. We're going to get to know each other tonight. I got a little card game that we're going to pass around, and people are going to have to tell us something you don't know about you, or what is your favorite this, and it's going to be fun. It's just a moment of relax. Tomorrow morning we're getting together, and tomorrow morning is really forging and casting the vision for the future. What is next year going to be like? We're going to proclaim it. We're going to basically write it down. We're going to look at our mission statement. Is it still current and applicable? What about our vision? What about the pack way? Does the pack way apply? Does it need to be rewritten? From there, then we're going to talk about we have 3 leaders: myself, my son, who's my COO. And by the way, he's going to be announced at this meeting. He will be taking the role of COO of Pro Auto Care come January 1. You and I will
Cool.
have a conversation, but he is stepping into the position of becoming second in command.
Awesome.
So this is these meetings are about. Our general manager is going to be roasted. He stepped into that role. He's doing a fantastic job. So we are going to take, and every person in the room has to take a moment and cast their vision for themselves and for their role in the organization for the next year. And it's going to be on different topics. So we're really excited. We're going
So
to have
cool.
fun. This is all going to happen in the next couple of hours.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll let you get to that, get prepared for that, make sure it's super successful. I love the idea. Thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All
Thanks.
right, thank you.
Yep. Take care. You have been listening to the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. You can hear more real stories from real business owners about what it takes to make it in business by subscribing to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you like what you hear, leave a review and a 5-star rating. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen CPAs and Advisors, providing advisory and accounting services to help you grow your business. Learn more at kaizencpas.com.